Hey everybody, Chuck Holton here. You know that friend or family member you have, we've all got one, who says, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. They tell you what they're going to do. And what they really mean, you've come to learn, is that they're thinking about maybe at some point talking about maybe beginning to think about starting to do something. Well, that's kind of how the phone call went between President Trump and President Putin today. President Putin, the media is saying he agreed to a ceasefire on energy infrastructure, but he actually didn't agree to a ceasefire. He said, well, I would be open to the thought of starting to talk about a ceasefire if I get this large list of demands met before we start talking. So before he agrees to agree on anything, he wants a list of large demands met. And those demands essentially can be broken down by just saying that their one major demand is that Ukraine loses the war. What they're saying is that not only the United States, but all of the Western countries that are sending weapons and armament to Ukraine have to stop before they will even start to talk about a ceasefire. And if they did get to a ceasefire, it wouldn't be a full ceasefire. It would only be a ceasefire on energy infrastructure. Now, why would Vladimir Putin agree to something like that? That's because Russia is being hurt a lot worse than Ukraine right now in terms of getting struck on their energy infrastructure. Ukraine has been weathering just an absolute hammering from Russia since the beginning of the war. Russia has been trying to take out the power grid inside Ukraine. And so what Ukraine has done is they've adapted, and instead of fixing their main thermal power plants, which have been around since World War II, and they're very, very old. They're enormous, some of the biggest machines on planet Earth, and they're very hard to fix, and they don't make parts for those things. They have to fabricate parts for them and things like that. So rather than spending a lot of time and man hours fixing those thermal power plants, they're just building new, smaller power plants all around Ukraine in a distributed fashion, networked together like a computer network. So it would be virtually impossible for Russia to blow them all up. And it's a really smart thing that they've been doing, and it's making their power grid a lot more robust and a lot more modern. And it will eventually help Ukraine get out from their dependence on these large thermal power plants, which are very inefficient and expensive to maintain, et cetera, et cetera. And the new system, if one of the power plants gets blown up, all the other ones just take up the slack, and that's why they're networked together. And it's a much smarter way to do it. But Russia is having their energy infrastructure absolutely hammered right now by the Ukrainians on a daily basis. Ukraine has been creating larger and longer range drones that they're firing into Russia and taking out their oil refineries, natural gas depots, things like that, all across Russia. To a depth of a couple thousand kilometers now inside that country. And so Russia is losing a lot more in terms of their energy infrastructure than Ukraine is. And that's why Vladimir Putin said he might be willing to consider thinking about starting to talk about at some point a ceasefire. Oh, if Ukraine agrees to lose the war. That's basically what it is. The list of conditions that President Putin has put forth are all non-starters for Ukraine, for sure, and for the West, they should be. The thing that concerns me is that President Trump has uh, made a practice with his dealings with President Putin of preemptively giving concessions before they even talk about a ceasefire. So he goes to President Putin and says, we will stop giving uh, intelligence to Ukraine, for example. It doesn't even ask for anything in return. So right now, apparently President Putin left President Trump on hold for some unspecified period of time during their phone call. That is something you just don't do to the leader of the free world. unless you're Vladimir Putin, apparently. And it showed what little respect Trump has. I'm not Trump. Putin has for the United States and for this process. He's playing games with the with President Trump and with the United States. And the right answer to that would be for President Trump to say, all right, well, if you don't want peace, we are going to turn on everything and start giving Ukraine everything they need to complete this task that they have of saving their country. And we're going to take economic measures that will crush Russia and make it increasingly difficult for them to continue to fund the war. That would be the right answer. I don't think that's what we're going to get out of President Trump, but we'll see. We'll see. Now, there's my criticism for the day of President Trump. Let's talk about good things that President Trump has done. His, all hell will break out mantra that he's been repeating over and over again about Hamas and the Houthis is now being borne out. And I've been saying for some time, if he makes threats like that and doesn't back them up with force, he's going to be seen as weak. And I think he understands that because now they're backing it up with force. They have been striking at the Houthis in Yemen for about 3 days now, very tough strikes on Yemen. And they've taken out multiple key leaders of the Houthi movement. They've taken out the presidential palace, which probably wasn't all that much of a palace, considering that it's in Yemen, of all places. And they are continuing with those sorties against the Houthis as we speak. They say they're going to continue to pound the Houthis until the Houthis are unable to continue to pose a threat to Israel. Now, President Trump said yesterday that if the Houthis fire any more munitions at Israel, that they will, that the United States is going to consider that to be an aggression by Iran, and the United States is going to respond against Iran. And Iran doesn't really want that to happen. So they may be telling the Houthis right now to, hey, cut it out a little bit. But I guess we'll have to see. The Houthis have no lack of hatred for the United States or Israel. So it would be kind of a surprise to me if they did actually stop because of our force that we're using. But let's hope that they do. In the meantime, Israel is striking hard inside Gaza. They have the ceasefire is over and done with. They've finished with the negotiations, and they were not successful at continuing phase one of the negotiations. So they're going on to phase boom of the negotiations and dropping ordnance on Gaza. More than 40 strikes yesterday overnight. The Palestinians are saying hundreds of people were killed. The Israelis, for their part, are giving a list of Hamas commanders who were taken off the table in those raids. They're also continuing with heavy enforcement inside Judea, Samaria, and the Hebron. And the IDF has been striking inside Syria pretty heavily, while the Syrian government, the new Syrian government, goes to war against the Lebanese army across the border with Lebanon. The IAF, the Israeli Air Force, is also striking inside Lebanon as well. And so all those ceasefires are done. There's no more ceasefires. No ceasefires in Russia, no ceasefires in Ukraine, no ceasefires in Israel or anything. Everybody's fighting right now. And so I don't know if you would call this an escalation or just a return to where we were before, but I think it bears looking at the history of ceasefires between Israel and Hamas and between Russia and Ukraine to kind of look forward and see, well, what's it going to look like most likely if they do get a ceasefire between Russia and Ukraine, for example. So we'll start there. Russia and Ukraine, in just since 2004, have had about 15 or 16 different ceasefire agreements that they have all sat down and agreed to and signed. And almost immediately, in every case, Russia breaks the ceasefire. Russia is not a trustworthy partner. And so, if any ceasefire agreement is worth less than toilet paper, if you're making it with a company, a country or a leader who is unreasonable and barbaric. And I think that's a perfect description of President Putin. He's a savage in a suit, and you cannot reason with a savage. You can only use force against them because that's the only real language that they understand. In Israel, there have been dozens of ceasefires between Israel and the Palestinians, and in every case, they have been broken by the Palestinians. There was a ceasefire on October 6th, and so it's not a surprise that the ceasefire is now over because the the Hamas was not willing to come back to the table and negotiate an extension or anything, even move to phase two. They weren't negotiating for that either. So that is what we're seeing in across these two war zones right now. And if you want to see the full live that I just finished on that topic that goes into a lot more detail, you can go just watch that here on YouTube. Otherwise, I hope you enjoyed this short and condensed version, and we'll see you again soon. Take care.